So today we're going to create an idea into what behind voice AMP literature study. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Cameron. I did a master degree of art in English literature and in Beijing. So our course is only 6 weeks. We are talking about literature study. So first of all, I would like to introduce the story one. We have story two, and we have two stories, story one and story two. So story one, we're talking about the Oliver twist. So why we study this? So our objective of the story of Oliver Twist was first published in 1838. So the purpose of its author, Charles Dickens, was to shock his reader. He wanted to show criminals as they were and to reveal all the honor and violence that hide in the narrow, dusty back streets of London. So first of all, I would like to brief introduction of Oliver Twist is a child of unknown parentage born in the workhouse and brought up under cruel conditions to which pauper children were firmly exposed that the children at whose hand he especially suffered being Bumble. He perished Bumble after experience of the unhappy apprenticeship. He ran away, reached London, and fall into the hand of the gang. So people always talk about character in this story. So we are going to talk the character Mrs. Mann in the charge of the bed baby farm, and Mr. Bubble, the beadle, Mrs. Corney, a widow in charge of the workhouse, old Sally, a woman in the workhouse, and Mr. Sowerberry, an undertaker, and Mrs. Sowerberry, his wife, Charlotte, the Sowerberry seven, no child Claypole, a charity boy, and Fagin, although darker, Charley Bat, and the fucking boy. Bill Sy, a robber, Nancy Bill Sy girl, Monk, a master stranger, Mr. Brownlow, an old gentleman, Mrs. Bedwin, Mr. Brownlow, housekeeper, Mr. Grimwig, an old friend of Mr. Brownlow, and Mrs. Maylie, a kind lady, Harry Maylie, her son, and Rose Maylie, her niece, and Dr. Loban, a friend of the Maylie. So we have the chapter one. We are talking about the Oliver Twist. So we summarize and discussion. So Oliver Twist responds sickly infant in the house workhouse. In the Paris again, and a drunken nurse attend his birth. His mother kissed his forehead and died, and the nurse announced that Oliver's mother was found lying in the street the night before. The surgeon noticed that she's not wearing a wedding ring. So that is a very important point in maybe occurs in the quiz or the midterm or finals. That is the surgeon noticed that she's not wearing a wedding ring. So in chapter 2, we just summarize this. So they established the rule that all poor people should have the alternative of being starved by gradual process in the house or by quick one out of it. Authority that workhouse sent Oliver to a branch workhouse for the trivial offender against the poor law. The overseer, Mrs. Mann, received an adequate sum for each child and keep, but she kept most of the money and let the children go hungry, sometimes even letting them die. That is a very bad point. That you can see they open the charity, but they let the children go hungry and sometimes even letting them die. In the chapter 2 again, we continue this. So on Oliver Nine's birthday, Mr. Bubble married church official known the Paris beadle informed Mrs. Mann that Oliver is too old to stay at her establishment. Since no one has been able to discover his mother or father's identity, he must return to the workhouse. Mrs. Mann asked how the boy came to have any name at all. Mr. Barrow tells her that he keeps a list of names in the alphabet. They call order, naming the often from the list of the born. Mrs. Mann fetched Oliver when Mr. Bumble is not looking. She glowered and set her face at the boy, so he stayed silent about the miserable condition at her establishment. Before Oliver departs, Mrs. Mann gave him some bread and butter so that he will not seem too hungry at the workhouse. So we have the summary in chapter 3. In the Barry, Oliver has been flogged and then locked in a dark room of a public example. Mrs. Gamfield, a British chemist sweep, offered to take Oliver on an apprentice. Because several boys have died under the supervision and the ball considered £5 to large reward and they settled just over £3. Mr. Bubble, Mr. Gramfield, and Oliver appear before a magistrate to seal the bargain. At the last minute, the magistrate noted Oliver's pale, alarmed face, and he asked the boy why he looked so terrified. Oliver fell on his knee and begged that he be locked in a room, beaten, killed, or any other punishment besides being apprenticed to Mr. Gramfield. The magistrate refused to approve the apprenticeship, and the workhouse authority again advertised Oliver availability. In chapter 4, the workhouse board considered sending Oliver out to see a cabin boy, expecting that he would die quickly in such miserable condition. However, Mr. Sowerberry, the parish undertaker, took Oliver on his apprentice. Mr. Bumble informed Oliver that he will suffer dire consequences if he ever complains about his situation. Mrs. Sowerberry remarked that Oliver is rather small. Mr. Bumble assured her that he will grow, but is wrong that is he will only grow by eating their food. Mrs. Sowerberry showed Oliver the leftover that the dog has declined to eat. So that is very bad condition. You can see the food that the dog didn't eat, but she served Oliver. Oliver devoured the food that has devoured great fast. After he finished, Mrs. Sowerberry leading to his bed, worrying that his apprentice seemed so light. So we have the chapter 1 to chapter 4 analysis. So Oliver twists in extreme criticism of the Victorian society treatment of the poor. The workout that figure prominently in the first few chapters of the novel for institution that the Victorian middle class established to these poor children. Cynical believed that the certain vices were inherent to the poor and that the poor family foster rather than discourage, such as why poor husband and wife were separating to prevent them from having children and sparing the lower class. Poor children were taken away from their parents in order to allow the state and the church to raise them in the manner they believed the most appropriate. In the narrative, the workhouse function are the signs of the moral hypocrisy of the working class. Mrs. Mann steal from the children in her care, feeding, clothing, them inadequately. The Victorian middle class saw cleanliness as a moral feature, and the workhouse was supposed to rescue the poor from the immoral condition of filth. However, the workhouse in Dickens novels briefly flashed Mrs. Mann never ensured the children practiced good hygiene except during an inspection. Workhouse were established to save poor from the starvation, disease, welfare, and the fact they end up visiting precisely those hardships on the poor. Furthermore, Mrs. Bumble's action underscore middle-class hypocrisy, and especially when her criticized Oliver for not gratefully accepting his dire condition. Bumble himself, however, is fat and well-dressed, and the entire workhouse board is full of fat gentlemen who praise the value of a meager diet for workhouse residents. The workhouse reproduced the way it's supposed to either. One workhouse boy is a while hungry, look reading in a chest to eat another boy. The suggestion is that workhouse force the resident to become cannibal. The workhouse will also mimic the institution of the slavery. The residents are fed and clothed as little as possible and required to work a task assigned by the board, and they are required to put on a face of cheery, grateful acceptance of the miserable conditions that have been forced on them. When Oliver does not, he is sold rather than sent away freely. Dickens highlights the criminal, the comical extent to which the upper classes are willfully ignorant of the plight of the lower classes. Since the powerful light, Oliver stands no chance of defeating the tormentor. Dickens takes it upon himself to defeat them. It's lighter armor that reveal their full more sharply than a serious tongue might have. Though Oliver himself will never have much of sense of humor, we will eventually meet other boys in the situation who will join Dickens in using armor as a weapon in their woefully unequal struggle with the society that oppresses them. In chapter 5, the author describes in the morning note Claypole, Mrs. Sowerberry, apprentice work, Oliver now select them the apple. Oliver accompanies Sowerberry to prepare the proper burial. The husband of the kiss delivers tearful tirade against his wife death. She has starved to death, and although he won't try to beg for her, the authorities send him to prison for the orphan. The dead woman's mother begged for some bread and cloth to wear for the funeral. At the graveyard before the funeral, some rag boys jumped back and forth over the coffin to amuse themselves. Mr. Bumble beat the shoe of the boy. The claimant performed at the service in 4 minutes, and Mr. Bumble quickly used gravely of the cemetery of Mr. Sowerberry kicked the clock away from the dead woman's mother. Oliver decided is the not fond of the undertaking business. In chapter 3, a measles epidemic arrived and Oliver gained expansive experience. His master dressed him well so that he can march in the procession. Oliver noted that the relatives of the kid's wealthy elderly people quickly overcome their grief after a funeral. Note became increasingly jealous of Oliver's speedy advancement. One day he insulted Oliver's dead mother. Oliver attacked him in a fit of rage. Charlotte and Mrs. Sowerberry rushed to knock at, and the three of them beat Oliver and locked him in the cellar. In the cellar. Remember that this is in the cellar, not in the room. In chapter 7, Knock rushed to feed Mr. Bumble, and sobbing so his injury from the confrontation with Oliver appeared. Much worse than they are, Mr. Bumble informed Mrs. Sowerberry that feeding meat to Oliver give him more spirit than appropriate to his situation in life. Still enraged, Oliver kicked at the cellar door. Sowerberry returned home, beat Oliver, and locked him up again. Oliver dragged his soul into tears. Early the next morning, Oliver ran away. On his way out of town, he passed the workhouse where he used to live and see an old friend, Dick, in the yard. Dick vowed not to tell anyone about Oliver's fight and bade him a warm farewell. In chapter 8, we describe that Oliver decided to walk in the 70 mile. Remember that 70 mile. 70 mile to London. It not 70. So it's too far. Hunger, cold, fatigue weakened him over the next 7 days. In one village sign warned that beggar will be thrown in jail. This is the sign refer to the racism. In the sign, they warn that beggar will be thrown in jail. Finally, Oliver limped into a small town just outside London and collapsed in doorway. Collapsed, remember that it means fall. He is approached by a boy about his own age named Jack Darwin, who dresses and acts like a grown man. Jack procures a light lunch for Oliver, inform him that he know a gentleman in London who will let Oliver stay in his home for free. Oliver learned that Jack nicknamed the Artful Darker. He guessed from the darker appearance that his way of life is immoral, not morality, not moral. He planned to ingratiate himself with the gentleman in London and then end all association with Jack. Chapter 5 to Chapter 8 analyzes Knock Claypole relationship with Oliver, illustrate victim, England, obsession with class distinction. The son of the stud parent not is accustomed the descent of the who are better off than he. That he is relieved to have Oliver nearby, since often Oliver is even worse than he is. Dickens character no cowardice and bullying are the same admirable quality that they develop in the fitness law. Dickens saw that class snobbery is a universal quality, characteristic of the lowest as well as the highest strata of society. Moreover, snobby behavior seems a component of class insecurity. The poor miserly turn who are poorer than they out of anxious desire to distinguish themselves from those who are even worse off in life. Oliver trip to London parallel that migration of the poor to urban center of England during the Industrial Revolution. Revolution. His hungry, exhausted condition is a result of the law forbidding begging. and it left him vulnerable enough to accept the questionable charity of a band of thieves. Dickens clearly blamed the crime committed by the poor on the people who passed the draconian poor law. Thus, in order to survive, Oliver must accept the act of Fagin ban. Oliver's stay with Fagin ban represented the first truly domestic experience in his life. Although Fagin house were filthy and derelict, yet constant and relatively indelict dinner sent with plenty of food allowed out in the tutor this and no one be to be grudged Oliver his full share food. In chapter 9, the next morning Fagin take off of the bag full of douche and watch. He noted that Oliver observing him. Fagin grabbed red knife and asked Oliver if he was awake an hour before. Oliver said he was not, and Fagin regained his kindly demeanor. The artful doctor returned with another boy named Charley. Racking after they worked hard that morning, the doctor refused to pocket boy and Charlie pulled out for handkerchief. Racking said that he will have to teach Oliver how to pick out the mark on the handkerchiefs with a needle. Oliver does not realize he has joined a band of pickpockets. So he believed their joke about teaching him how to make handkerchiefs and pocketbook. In chapter 9 for day, Fagin kept Oliver the door, practicing the art of picking pocket. Oliver noted that Fagin punished the doctor and Charlie if they returned home empty-handed. Finally, Fagin sent over out with the doctor and Charlie to work. After some time, the doctor noted that a wealthy gentleman absorbed in reading at a bookstore. Oliver watched with honor, horror as Charley and the doctor sneaked up behind the man and steal his handkerchief. He finally understands the nature of Frankenstein. The gentleman turned and see Oliver running away, thinking that Oliver is deceived. He raised a cry. He raised a cry. The doctor and Charlie see Oliver running past them, so they join in crying, "Stop the thief!" A light crowd joined the pursuit. A police officer arrived and grabbed Oliver by collar, ignoring the boy protests of him innocent. The gentleman who was robbed asked the police officer not to hurt Oliver and followed them to the police station. In chapter 11, the officer locked Oliver in jail cell to await his appearance before Mr. Franklin, the district magistrate. Mr. Brownlow, the gentleman, protests that he does not want to put his finger in it. Oliver fled in the courtroom and Mr. Friend sentenced him to 3 months of hard labor. The owner of the bookstore rushed and tells Mr. Frank that 2 other boys commit the crime. Oliver is clear of all charge. Pitying the sickly young Oliver, Brownlow takes him into court and drive away. In chapter 12, Oliver rests with a few a favor for day. When he awake, Brownlow kindly housekeeper Mrs. Bedwin is watching over him. He said that feel his mother has come to sit by him. The story of the Oliver pitiful life brings tears to Mrs. Bedwin's eye. Once Oliver is strong enough to sit up, Mrs. Bedwin carries him downstairs. A portrait of a young woman catches Oliver's eye and affects him greatly.
Mr. Brownlow dropped in to see how Oliver is feeling. Oliver thanked him for his kindness. Brownlow exclaimed with astonishment that Oliver's clothes resembled the young lady in the book. Brownlow's exclamation startled Oliver so much that the boy analyzes chapter 9 to chapter 12. So, from today's perspective, Dickens' characterization of the Fagin, though Jewish stereotype, is one of the more uncomfortable aspects of Hollywood. Dickens characterized Fagin is a very old Jewish Jews with a violent-looking appearance. Dickens' narrative casually refer to him as the Jews or old Jews, simply making Fagin into representative for all Jews. In chapter 13, Fagin erupts into a wreck when the doctor and Charley turn without Oliver. Fagin tosses a pot of the side, a rough, cruel man who makes his living by robbing cows. They resolve to find Oliver before reveal the operation to authority and persuade Nancy to go to the police station to find out what happened to him. In chapter 14, when Oliver next enters the housekeeper room, we note that the portrait of the lady whom resembled gun Mrs. Bedwin say that Brownlow removed because it seemed to worry Oliver. One day Brownlow sent for Oliver to meet him in his study. In chapter 15, Oliver takes a wrong turn on the way to bookstore. Suddenly Nancy appears. So she tells everyone on the street that Oliver is a runaway brother who joined a band of thieves, and that she is taking him back home to their parents. Everyone ignores Oliver's protest. Bill Sikes runs out of beer shop, and he and Nancy drag Oliver through the dark. In chapter 16, Nancy Sikes and Oliver arrive at a developed house in Squalid, a neighboring Fagin darker, and Charley loves mostly the fancy clothing Oliver is wearing. Oliver calls for help and flee, but Sikes threatens to set his victorious dark bully eye on him. So we analyze about chapter 13 to 16. The chapter establishes that the relationship between clothing and identity. The Deacon Nancy Wade and she enter the police station reveal key difference between the middle and lower class in Victorian society. The crowning talker decision plainly defying the door key and which he marked as the member of the property owning classes. Because dismissing himself herself as the middle class woman, the legal system in the form of the police station recognized her as individual hearing. In the entire middle classes gained both social voice and social visibility, they became an individual rather than a member of the penniless. So, chapter 17, the Brownlow punished an veteran of offering a reward of 5 guineas for information about Oliver Westbrook and his past. Mr. Bumble noted in the paper while traveling to London. He quickly goes to Brownlow home. Mr. Bumble stated that thin but Oliver has displayed nothing but treachery in gratitude, and Malik Bumble tells Brownlow that Oliver attacked no Claypole without provocation, and Brownlow decides Oliver is nothing but impostor. This is very difficult to believe Mr. Bumble. In chapter 18, Fagin leaves Oliver locked up in the house for days. During the daytime, Oliver has no human company. The doctor and Charley ask him why he does not just give him over the Fagin since the money comes quickly and easily in the Charley life. Chapter 19. So she planned to rob a house, but he need a small boy for the job. Remember, planned to rob a house, and Fagin offer Oliver service. So that is very bad. You can see. So Oliver, the Fagin sent to join the band. Warned Oliver that he will kill him if he show any sign of the hesitation during the robbery. Ran to help Nancy deliver Oliver to the center. Fagin watched Nancy for any sign of hesitation. Despite her endeavor to test again the trapping Oliver lie or crime, and she betrayed no further misgiving. Chapter 20. So Fagin informed Oliver that he will be taken to Sikes residence that night, and he gave Oliver a book to read. Oliver wait and showing horror that the book bloody tale of famous criminal and murderer. Yes. Chapter 21. She take Oliver a long journey to the town of Shipperton. They arrive after dark. 22. Side Lord Oliver to a ruined house where his partner in crime, Toddy Craig and Benny, are waiting. In a half past, Side and Critic out with Oliver. They arrive in the target house and climb over the wall surrounding it. You can see this is the activity that they plan, that they are watching, high and watching the house owner and to rob. We got analysis in chapter 17 to 22. The Oliver domestic relation with Fagin and his gang contribute to the novel argument that is the environment in which one rests a creature, the factor that is character than biological nature. The need for the companionship Dickens suggests try people to accept whichever community accept them in the return. As Oliver begin to find humor and joy in the companionship of the ship, it becomes evident how easy it for Fagin to corrupt Oliver. With the institution of the oppressive poor law, it is no wonder that penniless, friend, friendless children will adopt of the family any person who is generous to them and will readily adopt that person value. The Artful Doctor and the Charley are, aside from the crime and quite likable character. On his name implied, the Doctor is highly intelligent, and Charley is given to bursts of uncontrollable laughter and a little provocation. Both one imagine could have thrived in the legitimate society, where the society willing to admire them its rank. So thank you very much for the week one. We got this. If you have any questions, so contact me by the Telegram, or we are going to have the Zoom video conference uh, uh, for the course every Friday. So thank you very much. And also the Zoom meeting is for the morning class, and also for the evening advisory for the evening class, and on Saturday, every Saturday, for the weekend class. So thank you very much. If you have any question, don't forget to drop the question in the Telegram group, or we are going to uh, talk or discuss more in the Messenger group also. So remember, when you read the literature, don't forget to focus about the character and about the plot. Plot, it means that the storytelling, the flow of the story, and any scene that is very important event that occurs in the story. So remember, don't forget to mention the character, mean that we have the character analysis, And we talk about the plot. Plot mean the important event in the story. And then you can see something that occurs literature in literature. So in this story we are talking about the poverty. We are talking about the suffering of the orphan, that the orphan mean the children no parents. Yeah. So thank you very much.